Now I'll just show you what I've done here with all these little posts. As you would expect, the ones for the elevator and the rudder have the little post sitting on top of the servo arm. As you can see there, there's the servo sits under here, the little post pokes up. But the aileron ones actually go the other way. This is an aileron one, here you go, look. See, the servo sits up here and the post hangs down. I'll get a servo and show you what I mean. And it's important, the difference here is quite important. See, that is how the aileron posts are fitted for the aileron servos, and this is how the posts fit for the rudder and elevator. And you'll see why that is in a moment. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to install the elevator and the rudder servos. You'll see inside the fuselage here there's actually a cutout on both sides, one for one servo, one for the other. So they'll just slot in there quite nicely. And in fact, that's what I'll do now. I'll just slot them in their little respective places. And as I say, the 10-gram Hobby King servos are marvellous because they're just the right size. They're quite a neat fit. So there's one, and here's the other one. Slot that in there. Like so. There we go. And the wires will actually just run slightly underneath. You see the wire can fit under here. There's a little gap under that piece of foam for the servo wire. And there's the two servos sitting in there. Brilliant. All nice and tight. Now, you can use double-sided tape to hold these servos in, but it doesn't stick all the time. Eventually they come loose and then your trim goes all out and it doesn't give a very good result, let's say that. So I prefer to hot glue them, just a little dab of hot glue on here and a little dab of hot glue on there and a little bit at the back as well. You can see down the back there. You can get in there with a hot glue gun, just put a little bit of hot glue just to hold these servos in place. Now I have these servos mounted, as you can see, just a little dab of hot glue on each corner here, there and there, and the arms are in place, the grub screws are tightened up. I might have to loosen those off later on the little post, the grub screws, just to get the metal slid back, these rods slid in the right place to get the surfaces neutral with the servos at neutral, but we'll worry about that later. The next thing we're going to do is push the speed controller back between those two servos and anchor it in place. And of course the best thing for that is a bit of Velcro. And I have a whole lot of Velcro. This is what you get from Hobby King when you buy Velcro. It's a huge amount. It's almost a lifetime supply of Velcro. Marvelous it is, because Velcro can be quite expensive if you buy it in some places, but the Chinese seem to have sorted out just the right price for Velcro. So I'm going to put some fluffy on the controller, and I'll put it on the side opposite the label. Now, as you've seen in some of my other videos, you can cut the insulation away here, the heat shrink away here to get better cooling, but you don't need to in this application because this is a 30 amp controller. This is only going to draw about 18 amps, so it's not going to overheat. But I will stick some fluffy on the ESC like this. Try and get it nice and straight. Beautiful, look at that. And I'm going to stick the hooks inside the model. And just a word about Velcro, it's got hooks and it's got fluffy. So you can obviously put it either way around, but if you're going to be putting something in that you may be taking out, especially if you're using it on batteries or little keychain cameras, anything like that, then put the fluffy side on the item that you may be taking out and put the hooks on the airframe. Because if you take out this, or you take your little keychain camera out or your battery out and you drop it on the ground, the fluff won't pick up all the dirt, but the hooks will. So if you put hooks on your battery or on your camera or whatever, they'll pick up little bits of dirt and grass and stuff. It's really hard to clean off. So fluffy goes on the item you're removing, hooks go on the permanent part of the structure. So now I've got to get this back down there because it will actually fit just between the servos where I'm going to put my hooks. And of course the problem is that these big long wires, it needed to be that long in order for us to solder them. So what I do is through the back here I get a piece of wire with a hook on it, and you can just see those wires in there. I grab those wires and I pull them out with a hook, which also pulls the speed controller back. But before I do that, I will cut a piece of hooks and stick it between the servos, cut some hooks and stick it between the servos so that will anchor the speed controller in place. Now I'm just going to guess the width. I shouldn't measure it, but I'm just going to guess it because it's not that damn critical, to be totally honest. Good thing about the AXN, nothing is that critical really. I mean, you put them together and they work. It's brilliant. That's what a low-cost model should be like. So I'm going to stick my blue in here between the servos. Ooh, try and get it in the middle if I can, but if I don't, that's just not a big deal. There we go. Now you can see I've done that. You couldn't see me doing it because, as I say, it's hard to get the right shot with a camera on a tripod and still be able to see it yourself. Here I go. You can see I've got my hooked piece of wire and I've pulled that out far enough that I can now use my hands and just pull on the end that's connected to the speed controller up the front here, which will get pulled in like so until I've got it a reasonable way back between the servos, and I'll just push it onto the Velcro with something. Now that's quite firmly attached. I can now shove these wires back through here. They're not going to cause any problems. We don't want them, leave them poking out because they will in fact get tangled in the propeller, which won't be a good look when the propeller cuts off the wires to your speed controller. So using one's little finger, you can ram them down there and try and, basically you can use a screwdriver because you don't want to block up that vent, which you can do if they all form a big bunch in there, which they just did on me. But here we go, because this hole in the back is where the ventilation for the airflow comes out. It's no good having a hole that lets air in if you don't have a corresponding hole to let air out. So there we go. Now, this means the fuselage is almost completely done. We've done basically everything we need to do at this stage. Ooh, just get this here, and so this fits here. You can fit our battery in here, but of course, again, we might have to actually cut this out for the battery you're using. I know that with the Zippy batteries and the Turnigy batteries, this gap here is too narrow because originally these are supposed to use a 1300 milliamp battery, which will fit in there, but it's too light. The center of gravity then is too far back. They don't fly nearly as well as if you use a 3-cell 2200. So you'll have to cut away a bit of this foam just so the battery fits in there. I'm not going to show you that because even an idiot could work out how to do that. And perhaps the next thing to do is look at where we put the receiver. And as I said before, I'm not going to be using this Free Sky receiver. I actually have, in this big box of tricks down here, I have one of these Hobby King 6-channel receivers, which is what the guy who's going to be flying this uses. He uses the Turnigy transmitter and he has the Hobby King 6-channel receiver. So we'll use Velcro again. And as you can see, there's just enough room in these planes, if I get that out of the way, for the receiver to fit in there against this little vertical piece of firewall. And that's where I put my 4-channel Free Sky as well. Velcro that on the firewall, run the aerial, make a hole in the side so the aerial can run out and up over the wing if you like, and there we are. That's the receiver installed done, except we still have to put the wing together and run the aileron leads through so we can plug them into the receiver. Let's look at how we do that now. In the bag of accessories we have a Y lead, and it's quite a good Y lead. It's got generous lengths. The male end of that Y lead, or this end, you know, the end, the servo plug end, that goes through a little hole that has already been cut inside the fuselage. You can see the little hole just there. So you push that through there and try and convince it to come out the front. It's not actually that easy sometimes. It tends to get a bit stuck in. This is one of the hardest tasks in building your AXN, is getting this damn connector to come out the front. It's a real struggle. I won't do it on camera because inevitably I'll be cursing and swearing until it comes out. Actually, this one's not too bad. I can feel it coming forward now. It's time to look at putting the wing together, and the first stage is our wing tube that we sanded before, get the nice rough surface, and one of the wings, in this case it's the left wing as viewed from the rear of the model, and we've got to glue this tube into the wing. Now I do one half first, then I do the other half. So I have my trusty Chinese glue, and the idea is to put a little bit on both surfaces. You can put a bit in the wing there, use your finger to spread it around. Okay, just a few blobs here and there, like so. Then run your finger down. Remember, this is a kind of a contact adhesive, so it will get a bit sticky. She didn't put quite enough in there. You need a little bit of this glue. And if your finger's really small, if you're a little person, you may find it doesn't even fit in the hole. So there we go. I'll put glue down the groove. Now I'm going to put glue on the tube to about the same distance along the tube. And again, you need to use a reasonable amount. Ooh, not too much. You don't want it on the top surface because we're only going to glue along the bit we sanded. The reason for that is because we're not actually going to glue in the little foam cover that goes on there now. This is the strength of your wing you're dealing with here, so you want to use enough glue that you know it's going to stick. Don't be too scroogey with the glue. There we go. Now, because being semi-contact adhesive, it starts sticking to everything. Then plonk that tube in the thing, give it a good push, and you probably won't be able to slide it or turn it because, as I say, starts to go off straight away. Get it along to the end if I can. There we go. Now, that will do nicely. And then we leave that to cure. Well, when I say leave it to cure, it really only takes a few minutes to get quite sticky, start to glue, but I'm going to leave that for maybe 30 minutes so that the tube will be well and truly stuck to this wing half. And if you're worried at all, if it looks like there might be some excess glue, you can just take your modelling knife and just run it along and scrape out the excess glue, because otherwise the little foam strip that goes on the top may not fit properly. So just tidy it up if you need to. I've done this a few times, so I find I get pretty much exactly the right amount of glue without having to worry. There we go, done. Leave that for 30 minutes. Now that we've glued that rod into the wing here, I've also put on the aileron horn, as you can see. Aileron horn on there, just the same as the other ones, has those two little pins and it just goes through. And here is the little push rod linkage. It's very small and it's actually tiny. I think it's a little bit too short because I get really annoyed. They only just reach the servo. Now, I'm going to put the push rod linkage into the horn. Most important that you put it on the inside hole, the one that's closest to the actual aileron itself. Otherwise, you won't have enough throw. So you want that as close to the surface as you can get it. Then here's our little servo, and you see I've got the little post that hangs down, and you'll see why I've got the post hanging down in a moment. Fits into this little slot that's been moulded in the foam. Nice, easy fit. These servos, as I say, they just brilliant fit into this model. And then the little piece of wire goes through the post that pokes out of the servo, if you can get it turned around to the right angle. And of course the camera angle is all wrong. Here we go. Right, now, I haven't put a screw in to hold this top arm onto the servo yet, because I do that only after I have made sure that the rod's in the right place and everything, and once I've hooked everything up and got the servos all centered, although this is a little bit centered to start with, so this arm can fall off. Don't worry about it. That just shows you how the linkage goes together. And now I'll show you why I put that post hanging down. Look at this. Look, if you draw a line from the hinge line down to the servo, notice this is at right angles, very much at right angles. If I had put the post on the other side here, sorry, using the other arm, if I put the post on this side, the wire would have had to come across. So it wouldn't be at right angles to the hinge line, and that would have made the geometry less than perfect. But put it on the bottom, and the geometry for this push rod is perfect. That's why it hangs out the bottom. Of course, at this stage, we could fit the little foam cap over there. If I can find what I've done with it. I don't know, it's lying around here before. Here it is, sitting right in front of me. This little foam strip obviously fits in here like this, and that would we could glue that in if we wanted to, but then we couldn't get the wire to connect it up to the wire lead. So we're not going to glue that in at all. I'll show you two ways to do this later on, the way I do it and the way you could do it if you're really, really worried about the strength of the wing. But my wing hasn't folded and I've tried really hard to fold it, so I think the way I do it will work just fine. But now we've got to put this in the model and put the other half, and glue this bit to the other half of the wing. Here is our fuselage, and as you can see I've installed the receiver with a bit of Velcro on the firewall, run the aerial out the side. I've actually widened this bit for the battery, so we're all ready to go. We've virtually done everything we need to do with that particular fuselage. I'll turn this over, if I can do it without banging the camera. Here we go. So now what I'm going to do is two things. I have to plug in the servo to that Y lead, which I installed previously. Here we go. These are a good tight fit, so it's important because you don't want them coming apart. Once you put the plane together, that will not be a good look. And this is where it all gets a little bit fiddly, because now I've got to slide this in here. Remember, I've got this Y lead dangling out too, so to deal with that in a moment. But slide this in here, and you will have seen that I did the dry fit before, which was very important to make sure that everything was going to go smoothly at this stage. And I'll get my other wing, and you can see, stuck to my finger, you can see that I can also put this wing in here like so, run that lead up the side where it's going to go. Now you can see that it's all coming together. This tube here of course isn't glued into the wing yet, but that will be what we do once we've put that servo in and we've got everything sorted. And what we're going to have to do also is pull on that Y lead, because at the moment the Y lead is too long and it will stop the wings going together. See all this extra length we've got in the Y lead? Where that comes through inside, and I brought it through somewhere here. Here it is. Excuse me while I'm trying to do this. You can just pull on, put the Y lead, I can keep pulling on this and pull through the excess Y lead so as to take all that slack out of, whoops, bang the camera, all that slack out of here, because we want that to sit nicely in this little groove here, not be all sloppy. There we go. And now I'll just do the other wing. I'll put the servo in this other wing and put the horn on and the linkage like I did on the first one. But remember, we haven't glued this yet. As you can see at this stage, we've got the two servos mounted, we've got the wiring all in, and it's probably a good idea to actually plug it all in and make sure these servos work, that you didn't perhaps get a faulty Y lead. I mean, I haven't encountered one yet, but it is possible, it could happen. Everything is all in there. This tube here obviously is not glued in yet, but now our job is to glue the wing into place. And notice, because it's not pushed in, there's plenty exposed. And what I'm going to do first, of course, is just make sure that it will all go together, because sometimes stuff gets jammed up and then you can't actually get the wing in properly. But there we go. I just gave it a good push and the wing is all quite happy sitting in place. Show you the other side. You can see there it's gone in. Perhaps needs a little bit more at the back here. So this is why you're going to make sure it's not going to get jammed up. The leads aren't going to get caught or something like that. And there we go. That's how it will look when it's all glued together, but it's not glued together yet. So what we have to do now is pull it out again a little bit, pull the wing halves out a bit, so that we've got some area exposed to do the gluing. There we go. Right, so the next step is to run some glue through here, through there, and also, I mean, it gets a bit tricky now, we can probably, best thing to do is actually take this one right out for a moment. I know this is looking really messy, but now we want to glue this tube as well and glue the bottom of that. Glue on here, glue on there, glue on there, glue on there, and push it all together at once so that all that glue goes off. So it's a bit of a mission. A lot of glue is required. I will do that now. Now we have to fit these little foam strips that go over the carbon or the composite rod. And you'll notice that they look similar, but they're not exactly the same. So it's very important that you use the right one. If I hold them up to the camera, you can see that they have a slightly different angle on the ends. So make sure that when you hold them up, use the right one. This is that side, this is the other side. And what we have to do here, of course, is these just basically cover up the wiring we've got in there and cover the tube. You can actually slide them in. If you've done the job properly with all the gluing, they'll slide in and fit like that. See? It's magic, isn't it? Just make sure that wire's in the right place. And then they pop out again. So some people like to glue these so that they are in permanently. I don't. For the very reason that if you have a problem with one of your servos and you need to get at this wiring again, you have to cut it away with a knife. So there are two solutions to that problem. One of them is that you put tape right across here, clear tape right across to hold the thing in full length. That's what I generally do. What one of our club members came up with, which is a brilliant idea, and I should do it anyway, but I can't be bothered, is because you only need to get at this part of the wing to get the servo in and out, you could cut this strip, you could glue in the outboard half and tape the inboard half, because this would provide a little bit of extra strength for those high G maneuvers, because it would lock in the spar, the composite spar, better than the tape. But I mean, to be totally honest, I've pulled so many G's with these things, vertical dives from incredible heights, full up elevator at the bottom, the wings flex and bend a bit, but I've never broken one, so I'm just going to put mine in and I'm going to tape them. And if I need to get them out, I peel the tape off, I can lift it out, I've got full access to everything in there. But you can only do that if you've made sure that you've glued in these carbon rods or the composite rods really well. If they're not glued to the top surface, then the tape may not hold. It's your choice. You can do whichever way you choose. I'm happy with my choice. That's what I'm going to be doing this time, just taping them in. As I say, you've got to make sure you've got everything lined up properly in these holes so that it'll actually go in the hole. There you go. And just push it in far enough that it just pops in the end. More aircraft in the area. There we go. So now that's covered up the wiring, covered up the spar, and I'll just run some clear tape. Get yourself a roll of big wide clear tape. Just run that down there to cover the thing. And I mean, basically then our plane's almost completely finished. smooth that down rather nicely. Little slot either side. There's a little bump in the foam here designed to protect the servo arm, and so you have to just cut the tape either side of that with your knife so that it smooths down nice and firmly either side of it. There you go. There we go. No glue required for that part of the airframe. There we go. She's all done. The wing is in place. Servo wires are in place. It's all ready to go. Now, there's only one more thing that I really do to all my models, and so I put some fiberglass tape underneath, because if you're going to be landing, you may land on concrete, cement, on tarmac, on grass, on dirt. It stops this foam wearing away or getting all impregnated with dirt, or at least it reduces the amount of dirt that gets into the foam and reduces the wear and tear. Like so. Make sure it's well and truly stuck on. You can put several layers side by side to ensure that the whole bottom surface of this is protected from scrapes and dings, kind of scrapes and dings you're going to get, whether you like it or not. Done. Done, well and truly done. There's a nice smooth hard surface on the bottom. And this will also help if you want to take off from the grass. If you want to take off from the ground, it gives a low friction to the bottom of the model. If you have just the foam, it tends to be a bit rougher. And that's going to give you plenty of strength and a nice low friction surface. The other thing you're going to need to do, of course, is fit the propeller. And the propellers with these models obviously fit over the motor, but they're a very sloppy fit because they come with a set of adapters here, adapters, and one of these will be a snug fit on the motor shaft. There you go, that's a fairly snug fit. This one here, so I just break that out and you push it into the back of the propeller. Then when you push the propeller on, it's a much nicer fit. It also comes with a little O-ring, and the little O-ring just hooks over the two little screws that are hanging out the back of the motor and holds the prop on. But one important thing, put a drop of CA in the back of the propeller where that little disc fits in, or it will fall out and then your propeller will go all sloppy and it'll be vibration city. An alternative to this prop saver setup here is to simply use a 3mm collet type prop adapter, and it's actually what I prefer to do. I find I get much better results, and because these little O-rings, although they're wonderful and cheap as beans, they do perish quite quickly, especially if you have a hot summer sun like we do here in New Zealand. Then the little O-rings will perish, and before you know it, you've lost a prop. Now they do give you two props, fair enough, that's nice, but I lost both my props because the little O-rings just get breaking. And another thing to note is the way to put the propeller on. If you put it on backwards, your AXN will be very, very disappointing in performance. This is the correct way around. Now we're looking from the back, and you can see that the little curvy is going to rotate this way, and that sort of tip just trails behind. You see that? And if you look at it, there you can see how the little rubber O-ring works, in case you're wondering about that. So the propeller should sort of have that swoosh going around. It goes around this way, of course, to pull it through the air. So make sure, and also it means that little ring that I spoke about, you can probably see it in the back there, and I super glued it in. And if you don't super glue it in, obviously it can just fall out the back. So super glue it in, and that's the way it fits on the motor. So basically, we're pretty much all done, except for the final job that is not to be forgotten, of course, is to put some hot glue on here to hold these servos in place. And ignore the beeping, that's nothing to do with me. So a little bit of hot glue, you just need to put it over the little lugs. You don't have to actually put it over the whole servo, just the lugs that will hold your servos in place. And trust me, if you don't glue them in, they will fall out. Don't ask how I know, just take my word for it. A little dab of hot glue there, a little dab of hot glue here. There we go. Done. There is our AXN Clouds Fly Floater. Of course, upside down. I'll wait till the glue goes hard and I'll show you what it looks like. Here it is. It's the Clouds Fly Floater jet, and you can see in there I've put all the batteries in. Everything's in there. It's a bit of a squeeze for some of these wires, but don't worry too much about that. They all fit in quite nicely. I've got the antenna hot glued up here to the fuselage for this particular radio, and everything seems to work. Now I've programmed the radio so that our controls all work the right way. As you can see, we've got ailerons, we've got elevator, we've got rudder, and we've even got throttle, and it blows the right way. So there you go. I'll put the hatch on it and I'll consider this a job done. Well, actually almost done, because you always want to use a rubber band on the hatch. The magnet, the rare earth magnet in the top here, just isn't strong enough. If you're flying upside down, things can fall out. So there you go. That's how you build a Clouds Fly Floater jet in a reasonably short space of time to a reasonably high standard. I hope you've all enjoyed watching the video. If you've got any questions, put them on the bottom, or go to the RC Model Reviews forums, or just ask me in an email or a PM through YouTube, and I'll do my best to explain any bits that I may have overlooked. So now it's time to go flying.